All right guys, welcome back to another video. So now we're gonna be actually filling this chip and placing the bridge to actually get that resin inside of there. So we just went ahead and flexed the chip. We went ahead and prepped the chip. We made sure that it was dry. We made sure that it was open. That way the resin can flow inside of the chip. We just did all of that. Now, one thing I like to do is make sure that nothing is on the surface of the glass. I wanna grab a little paintbrush or like a little tool to blow it off a little bit, just to make sure that there's no dust and no broken glass on the outer surface of there. So I'll kind of just use this just to kind of get all that dust out of there, make sure that it's dry, make sure that there's no dirt inside. Once I do that, now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my bridge. So we went over all of the tools in the earlier module of the course, but I'm gonna go ahead and grab my bridge with the injector barrel on it, and we're gonna go ahead and place it on top of this chip. So we're gonna go ahead and grab it. We're gonna place it on here. Now what I like to do, this is the top up here, if you can see my finger. This is the top of the glass, this is the bottom of the glass, if you can see my finger here, and then passenger side and then driver side. So what I'm going to do is actually place this on the top of the glass, because if I were to do it on the bottom of the glass and place it over the chip, the resin might drip out and fall onto the actual suction cup here. So what I like to do is place this right on top. That way gravity and the law of gravity, obviously the resin will fall through and go down on the windshield. So I like to place it right on top. I'm gonna place it right here, and I'm gonna place this injector barrel right over the chip, over the impact point. So we're gonna go ahead and line it up. I'm gonna go ahead and place it right on top, and I'm gonna line up the injector barrel right over the chip and right over the actual impact point. Once I place this on here, I'm gonna go ahead and use this, this suction cup lever here, and I'm gonna go ahead and mount it onto the glass. Once it's mounted, it doesn't move anywhere. I wanna make sure, double check that this barrel is actually lined up over the chip, over the impact point, and then I'm gonna go ahead and place these down. So the injector barrel is gonna go straight to the glass. I'm gonna turn it until it just stops onto the glass. Then I'm gonna use the other side, the leveling screw on the other side. You guys should know what that looks like when I talked about this earlier in the course. I'm just gonna screw that down and make sure that it's touching the glass. I don't wanna tighten it yet. First thing is, once they're both touching the glass, the injector screw and the injector barrel, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the injector barrel and turn it 1/4 of a turn, I like to say. So 1/4 of a turn down, and then another 1/4 of a turn on the injector or the leveling screw on the other side of the bridge. Turn that about 1/4 of a turn. That's enough tension for me to actually fill it. This is probably going to leak because these are some old seals. I haven't replaced them, but I did that on purpose because I want to show you guys what it looks like when it does leak. So now that I have the actual bridge set up here, I have the injector barrel turned 1/4 of a turn, the leveling screw turned 1/4 of a turn, and we're set up, we're lined up. Now we can actually put the resin inside of the barrel. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our resin here. This is the Magnabond resin. That's what I like to use. As you can see, Magnabond resin. Now, I like to grab this resin. I'm gonna go ahead and unscrew it. And I actually use just the bottle that they give us, this bottle, and then the actual, dripper right here. I like to get about, some air pockets in here, but I like to get about that much. So it's about halfway or so, halfway up the vial there. So about halfway, that's more than enough resin to put inside of this injector barrel for this particular chip. Now, if you have bigger chips or if you have smaller chips, it just kind of depends, but I like to go about halfway, maybe a little bit less than halfway, and start off with that. You don't want to use too much, you don't want to use too little. You can always add more later down the road, but I like to use about halfway, maybe a little bit less. So I'm gonna grab that much, go ahead and put it inside of the injector barrel, squeeze it inside so it hits the bottom. And then we're gonna go ahead and grab our injector screw. So here's our injector screw. This is gonna be going inside of the barrel. That way we can actually pressurize it in. So these are screw type injectors. There are different types of injectors. There's a spring type injector that you can that uses a spring to kind of inject it and create the vacuum, but I like to use the screw type. It's just much easier. These are the ones that you probably have, so this is the ones that you're going to be practicing with. Go ahead and place that inside of the barrel and screw it down until you feel some tension. If you just lightly screw it, I can't go anymore if I don't put more tension on there. So just go until you feel some tension and actually screw that in. So what I like to do is screw it down a little bit, just till you feel a little bit of tension, and that is gonna start the injection cycle. So this is our first injection cycle. We're gonna be doing cycles of this when we inject it and also create a vacuum. So this is our first injection cycle. It's pressurizing that resin to flow inside of the chip. And it might be hard to see, but there is some resin falling out of the seal. Again, I did this on purpose because these seals go bad. You're going to have to replace these seals. So we're starting our first injection cycle. There are some techniques to make sure that this resin gets inside of the chip, and I'm going to show you guys. So this is our first injection cycle. It's just screwed in a couple turns, or a couple quarter turns, I would say. I don't want to screw it in too tight. I don't want to create too much tension on the glass here. So I just twisted it in a little bit and let that do its thing. So now it's injecting. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, to kind of depends on if it's open or not open, but right now I'm injecting that resin inside of there. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my scribe and kind of mess around with it. I like to kind of flex around on all of these little cracks. Kind of hard to see, but there's one crack right here that is very faint. Let's see if you can see it. But if I can flex on this crack right here, you should be able to kind of see that right there. That's one crack that isn't filled quite yet, but it is going to be filled. So as you can see, the resin's kind of flowing out. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up just so I can see and make it clean. So as I'm injecting, I'm gonna flex on this crack and see that resin flow inside of there. I'm going to go around the chip and just go to all of the cracks, and if there's any other cracks, this one doesn't have very many. But I'm going to flex all around this chip just to make sure that all that resin's flowing in. So once I do this for about 2 minutes or so, I'm going to go ahead and do my first vacuum cycle. So what I'm going to do is actually grab the injector pin. I don't want to grab the barrel. I want to grab the pin and actually twist it out. Now you can feel this as you're twisting. You can feel the tension release. You don't want to release it all the way, but you just kind of want to turn it a few turns to make sure that it creates a vacuum and all that air is kind of coming out. What this is doing is the vacuum takes all the air out of the chip. So kind of hard to see here, but there should be air coming out of the chip into this barrel right here. So as I'm doing this vacuum cycle, I'm reversing the injection, creating a vacuum. All that air is coming out of the chip and into the barrel to make sure that there's no air pockets inside of that chip. So once I do this for about 30 seconds, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the injection cycle. So I can turn this back clockwise, turning it back in, screwing it in, and just do it until you feel enough tension there. You don't want to inject too hard because then you're going to be putting a lot of tension on the glass that could cause these chips to spread and get bigger. So I like to just go a couple turns at a time, go a couple turns at a time. If I'm injecting this and I do a couple, I would say like 2 quarter turns or so, and I can feel that there's a lot more tension on the barrel, I can also turn this barrel back to kind of relieve some of that tension and then inject as I do that. So making sure all that resin is flowing inside of the chip. Now we're gonna do a couple cycles of this. We're not just gonna do 1 cycle. I like to do about 3 cycles or until all the air is out of the chip and all of that resin is filling inside of the chip. So again, as I'm on this injection cycle, I like to kind of flex around the chip, make sure that all of those legs are kind of filling in and there's no legs that aren't filled. So as I'm flexing, I should be able to see any leg that isn't filled. It will be able to be visible and you'll kind of see that there's no resin inside of that leg. So this one, filling in pretty good, obviously. Kind of injecting it in, making sure that it's pressurizing, getting that resin inside of there. I do this for about another minute or so. Then, after I'm done with that and I'm sure that, that the resin is flowing inside of all of those cracks, I'm going to create another vacuum cycle to make sure that there is no more air inside of the chip. So I'll just kind of screw it out, and you can kind of feel this when you unscrew this. You can feel the tension kind of releasing. You don't want to go all the way out and bring that injector pin out yet. You just kind of want to create that vacuum just to kind of release or unscrew this injector pin to kind of create that vacuum, so that vacuum kind of pulls all the air out of the chip. Again, that's what we're doing. We're taking all that air out of the chip and putting it into this barrel. So I'm going to let that sit there for about 30 seconds or so, or until I see that there's no more air inside of the chip. You can kind of see this when you have a mirror behind here, you can kind of see everything that is going on here. This video is kind of just to show you exactly what to do, but while you're actually practicing, you will be able to kind of see all of this stuff. So when you have a mirror back there, you'll be able to see all the air coming out and going into the barrel. And then when you're actually injecting it, you'll be able to see that resin flow inside of the chip and flow inside of those cracks. And you'll actually be able to get a visual on exactly what that looks like. So once I do this second vacuum cycle, I could actually take it all the way out if I need to. That way all the air kind of comes out and everything. Then I could put this back in there and go to my third injection cycle. So kind of just screwing this in until I feel a little bit of tension. You can kind of see there how it is starting to seep out. And that is only because this is an old seal. But if you have a new seal, probably shouldn't do that. And if it is doing that on a new seal, you probably don't have enough tension here, so you got to kind of mess around with this. You can always move this up and down if you need to, or tighter, loosener, whatever the case may be, but essentially that's the whole point. So now we're on our third injection cycle here. I'm pretty confident that there is no air inside of this chip, but there might be an air pocket inside of there. So after this injection cycle, after about a couple minutes, 2 minutes or so, I'm going to do another vacuum cycle just to make sure. So just for purposes of showing you guys, I'm going to go ahead and create that another vacuum cycle. Let that do its thing, make sure that all that air is kind of coming out and kind of pull that all the way out. So now I'm going to be doing the injection cycle, and I'm going to go ahead and take off this bridge. So I'm going to put it into an injection cycle, making sure that all that resin's flowing in. One last check just to make sure that there is no air inside of there. All the cracks are filled. To me, from here, it does look like it is all filled. So kind of just flexing around, making sure that it's all filled here. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove this bridge, and I'm going to show you exactly what to do in the next video of what to do. So I will see you guys in the next video.